Hey there, and welcome back to Up Next in Commerce. This is Stephanie Postles, CEO of Mission.org, and your host of this show. After building brands, teams, and customer bases at companies like Citysearch, Ticketmaster, and Saatchi Art, Sean Moriarty was the perfect person to lead Leaf Group as it amassed its portfolio of top digital brands. On today's episode, Sean discusses some of the lessons he's learned about assembling a high-performing team, and divulges how he's helping Leaf Group's brands experiment in an evolving digital world, while still keeping focus on the tried and true foundational metrics that will keep a brand around for the long term. Plus, he even gave me some tips on where to start with my novice art collection, so that was great. However, before we jump into this interview, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Salesforce Commerce Cloud. They put out their second edition State of Commerce report, and you don't want to miss it. Go to sfdc.co/commerce insights. All right, on to the episode with Sean Moriarty. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, so we're about to go on a journey. We're getting in our Wayback Machine, and we're going back to 1997. I want to hear where you were and what you were doing.
Sure. All right. Well, that's a quarter century. So we're going pretty far back in the Wayback Machine. At that time, I had just started working at Citysearch, which was the digital city guide. And that was in Pasadena, California. I, was just a bit out of grad school and super excited to kind of go on a journey on, what became the consumer internet. Started my career as a QA engineer and, moved really through the product and tech ranks into general management, but was really, really fortunate to be at the very beginning of something, so powerful and profound, and to get to go on that ride.
Mm-hmm. So this was, is it accurate to say this was like one of the first search engines?
Yeah. So we were more of Citysearch was probably less of an engine and more of a searchable city guide. Think about every business listing in a local market, but really high quality content written, particularly in the arts and entertainment category, but lots of information so people could better explore the places they lived in or places they wanted to go, but also a platform for small businesses to put their best foot forward online at a time when most people didn't even know what that meant.
Mm-hmm. So when I was looking at the company a bit more, because I had not really heard too much about it, and when I was looking at the history, it kind of reminded me of PayPal Mafia in a way, where it had all these people that went on to do amazing things. And to me, Citysearch also had all these amazing early team members who went on to do amazing things. I was looking, I think the co-founder of Peloton was there, the former president of Disney Interactive was there, and who was the other one? The person who ran OpenTable, like some big hitters there. What was it like working with people like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you look back, it was, I guess, a lightning strike of sorts, because you work with all of these incredible people at the very beginning also of your career. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of companies just aren't like that. We're a pretty young group, but a super capable group of people. We got to, again, I think being at the beginning of something is really, really valuable, because it does create a very level playing field. If you're hardworking and you're smart and you're at the beginning of an industry, it does create a lot of opportunity for people young in their careers to learn very quickly and succeed. And then if there's a really high talent density at that start, I think it even more so the case. But yeah, you really hit on it. John Pleasance, Tom Stock, Charles Kahn, the founder of Citysearch, just really, really smart, capable, talented people. John Foley went on to do Peloton. Tim Sullivan went on to run Match.com and then Ancestry. Selena Tabakawala joined us when we acquired Evite not too long after that. And so just this, really, really high caliber group of people, not just professionally and smart, but really, really good people. And it's a blessing to have, that earlier in your career.
Yeah. Where are the stories around that? So I'm like, why aren't there more of these? Like I said, there's so much around the PayPal Mafia, where they all went. Like, why aren't there more around the Citysearch Mafia?
Yeah. I think, we live in a world that changes so fast, and there's always something new and fresh and fascinating. But I think it was also speaks to kind of a couple of things. One is geography, right? So the company's based, in Los Angeles. And many of the core group of us, I'm one of the few who actually remained in LA. People, spread as, with the rise of the consumer internet, a lot of the action kind of moved, to Northern California, and then the next best opportunity in many cases for some folks was in Northern California or in New York, or, in the case of Ancestry, two CEOs out of Citysearch, first Tom Stockham and then Tim Sullivan, was in Salt Lake City. And so I think there's a bit of a diaspora, but I also think that it tended to be a pretty, I would say, confident and capable group of people, but egos pretty much, in check, and, people who don't necessarily advertise a lot, but were highly competent.
Yeah, the best ones who need more stories told about them. So after Citysearch, where did you go next?
So what had happened is shortly before we took Citysearch public back in, I guess, December of '98, we had acquired Ticketmaster.com, which was a fledgling, online business that had the exclusive and perpetual right to sell all Ticketmaster tickets on the internet. And we took that combined company public. And I became fascinated over the course of the next year or so with the Ticketmaster business, the ticketing business overall, but particularly the online part of it, because it felt like a natural to move online. Certainly many other people saw that even before I did. But coming up the product and technology side, being able to build Ticketmaster.com into a dominant distribution channel online was just a really, really exciting thing. It presented for someone who was building products and platforms, a really interesting set of challenges, right? You're selling scarce, perishable inventory that's vastly oversubscribed online. The technical challenges are significant. The stakes are high because you're doing that on behalf of your clients. And, and so I ended up, spending the next, 10 years of my life, working with the team and building that Ticketmaster business, first on the product and technology side. And then that's what really moved me into general management. But I was just fascinated by, building a platform that, connected audiences to what they cared about most in entertainment, and doing that on behalf of professional sports teams and Broadway show producers and rock bands, so it was really, really visible, intense, and exciting for me.
Yeah. What did you learn when it came to building up a team, especially now as you're kind of moving through where you're at today? I mean, what kind of lessons do you take with you from those earlier times?
Yeah, I think what was great about that business for me early in my career was really that it was at its core a technology-driven client service business, right? So, at Ticketmaster, we're an agent on behalf of a principal, and your technology needs to work on behalf of your client, or it creates real problems. And, you're selling tickets, which are really, really expensive. They're very, very scarce, and you're doing it super quickly. And so you learn a few things. One, it's a business where you're always on. Two, your homework gets graded every single day, because if you screw it up, you're screwing it up not on behalf of yourself, what you are, but it directly impacts a client who is absolutely and should be keeping score. And so I think that level of kind of oversight and scrutiny and high expectation really helped kind of imprint the importance of having very high standards for quality, early in the career. The other thing is the business never stopped, right? So you're selling tickets on behalf of thousands of clients in dozens of countries, and something is always going on. So it's operationally intense. You're always on, and your time is not your own. And so you start to learn how to build teams that can deliver that level of service, which means you have to start looking into people's personalities, right? Which is, when you're building teams, okay, this is what the mission is. Are we identifying people who are comfortable in effectively an always-on world? How are they going to feel when they're releasing code in an environment, which is going to determine whether we do a good job of selling tickets to the Yankees in the World Series or for a U2 tour, and that code blows up? And so you start really understanding the importance of temperament and personality as well as skills. And then the interplay of those personalities on a team, again, because, that there was a very, very high pressure environment as well, just by the very nature of the business. I would say those are some of the biggest lessons. The other thing that was, I think really valuable is, getting it right. Facebook kind of popularized the notion, move fast and break things. And, I think if you're a content site on a consumer internet, that's okay, but it's not always true. When you're dealing with millions of dollars worth of other people's inventory, breaking things really is not on the table. You need to move quickly because, they want their business to evolve extremely quickly, and you effectively, through the delivery of technology, enable that. But you can't break their business along the way. And so balancing speed and responsiveness to clients with being able to deliver consistently in a way that's not going to damage someone's business, again, it goes back to, really developing those kind of standards of excellence.
And so you were at Ticketmaster for 8-ish years or so, right? And then you were the CEO for 5, is that correct?
So I spent my I started getting involved in the business fairly heavily, I think probably in late 98, early 99, if memory serves correctly. And then I took over the Ticketmaster.com business, I think, in 01. But again, I ran product and technology for all of Ticketmaster through 04, became the COO in 04. And then from 2005 to 2009, ran the business.
Okay. And so at what point did you start getting a little antsy and you were like, I'm ready for my new thing? Like, when do you know it's time to jump
it's interesting. I wasn't, I really, really, enjoyed the job and wasn't necessarily looking for the next thing. Loved the team, loved what we were doing. But, we had spun the business out as a public company back in, I think August of 2008, right around the time when, the world melted. I think, Lehman and Bear Stearns failed, kind of within weeks. So it was a tough time being, out in the public markets. And the board had made the decision to combine Ticketmaster with Live Nation, kind of a vertically integrated live entertainment company. And, had decided that, they, wanted someone other than me, Michael Rapino, who's still running the combined business today, to run that business and run it, I would say probably entertainment and promotions first. So it was a natural time, for me to move on.
Got it. Okay. So where was your next stop?
Yeah. So for the next couple of years, I had a young family at the time, and I had been on the road a ton from 2005 to 2009. And my wife and I had our first child in 06, and then another one in 2010. And, I knew I wanted to go back to an operating role, but I did quite a bit of board work actually at the time. In that interim period before I went back into a full-time operating role, I was the chairman of 2 LA-based tech companies, one MetaCloud, which was private cloud as a service, which we sold to Cisco. And the other one was Triton Digital, which is a platform technology provider for at the time, the terrestrial radio business as it moved online. And then I also did a stint as an EIR up at Mayfield Fund in Silicon Valley. And I did that probably for about 3 years, 3.5, before I took the Saatchi Art CEO role back in 2013.
Okay. Tell me a bit about Saatchi Art.
Yeah. So, I knew I wanted to go back into an operating role. I had looked at a bunch of things, but I, was fascinated by the fine art category, both from a standpoint of personal interest in the category. I should say the category. I mean, I'm an art lover. And so, but as a professional, it was one of those categories that it's, kind of really stubbornly resisted moving online. And, I've had the view, since the mid 90s, that the internet is kind of the way of all things, when it comes to commerce and content. How long it takes, is really, it's an important detail, but a detail nonetheless. And so when I looked at the category and I looked at the Saatchi Art business, and this is really interesting. You've got, artists can have, from a commercial perspective, have a pretty difficult lot in life. And it's also, the average person, unless they are particularly, kind of motivated, doesn't really have the means to fall in love with art or artists. And it's substantially an access, education, and information problem. And the internet can be great at bridging those gaps. And, I saw a platform that had, tens of thousands of emerging artists from across the globe on it, doing extraordinary work, and thought, gosh, we could build this into, a really, really good business and make the world a better place, which I think, every entrepreneur, it's going to, I would say in some ways it's an internet talking point, but it also can be true, right? The idea that you can build a platform that allows artists to make a living while they do what they love, and you can introduce people across the globe to beautiful works that are accessible to them at a wide variety of price points under a brand they can trust. So kind of married the internet, kind of brought all those elements together to lead to a platform that, that we're very, very excited to have part of Leaf Group today.
Amazing. So for someone like me who is not big into art yet, where would you recommend I start, or what's a favorite artist right now that you're following? Yeah.
Oh gosh, there's an awful lot. I think probably the best thing to do is go to Saatchi Art, and what you'll see. So I think that's always true. It sounds almost trite when you first hear it, but if you talk to Rebecca Wilson, our chief curator, right, you really should start with go on your journey, starting from what you like and grow from there. And the more you look at, the more art you see, the more you'll develop, kind of or refine your own sense of what you really, really like the most. But there are thousands of absolutely extraordinary artists on the platform. I think, just going on the site and looking at the collections that our curators put together pretty much every day. One of the things that's amazing about Saatchi Art is every single work of art on the site, our curators have actually looked at. So while it's an open platform, any artist can go on, create an account, and upload their works. Those works are looked at by professional curators to make sure that they're properly classified, that the imagery is of high quality, it's going to look good online. And that creates a very, very good experience, for the customer.
Yeah, I was just browsing through the best of 2022, which to me was the best place to start. And I already saw some very cool pieces, and nice knowing kind of how, it's filtered in a way and curated and has a stamp of approval to make sure it looks good.
Yeah,
so.
And if you go onto the site or onto YouTube and you look at the Saatchi Art channel, you'll see inside the studio where, we go in depth with an artist and they're talking about their particular creative process and, what moves and motivates and inspires them. And, that can be, really, really powerful.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so you're at Saatchi, and then it gets acquired by Leaf Group. Is that how to think about it?
Then the predecessor to Leaf Group is Demand Media. And
okay. Tell me about Demand Media.
Yeah, so Demand Media was started in the mid 2000s, digital publisher, and had really focused on creating long tail content in a variety of consumer verticals. That business went public in 2011. And, it was really built on long tail SEO, had some real challenges after going public as a consequence of Google updating their algorithms and focusing on richer, deeper, frankly, higher quality content that Demand Media had. So the business, was struggling a bit. At the same time, the team had started to diversify the portfolio there. And the CEO at the time had reached out to me and said, "Hey, we really like the Saatchi Art business. We'd like to talk to you about it." And they had just acquired a business called Citysearch, which is, our largest business by revenue today. Also an artist-powered marketplace, in the home decor category. Yep. And, those, conversations led to the acquisition by then Demand Media of the Saatchi Art business and me taking the CEO role of the combined company. And what kind of the kind of impetus for that deal, from my perspective, why it was a good thing for Saatchi is one of the things I realized in the kind of year or so I was running Saatchi Art is that, a very good business and the type of business that should grow for a very, very long time at a healthy clip, because it's, you're you're selling fine art, painting, drawing, sculpture, mixed media at relatively high price points that, one, that's a behavior that is really still just growing online and people are getting comfortable with it. And two, it has very high average order values that you can't really bend the curve with the kind of the conventional venture capital, pour a lot of dollars on top, bend the customer acquisition curve, in presto, in 3 or 4 years, you have a business, but I kind of looked and said, inside a broader portfolio with patient capital, the business has very good unit economics. It can grow for a very, very long time, and it fits within what demand is trying to do. And so, I guess 8 years later, here we are.
Wow. Okay. So for anyone who does not know what Leaf Group is, can you give a high level of what the company is and kind of how it works?
Yeah. So, Leaf Group, kind of in simplest terms, it's, a diversified consumer internet company. We own and operate brands that connect consumers to what they're most passionate about in life. And the categories, we focus on are primarily, but not exclusively at this point in time, art and design and fitness and wellness. We, in the art and design category, we own Saatchi Art, Society6, Hunker. In fitness and wellness, we own Well and Good and Livestrong.com, and we own several other brands. We will build brands internally from nothing, like we did with Hunker. We will acquire businesses like Well and Good, which is one of the largest wellness sites on the internet. We acquired that business back in 2018. But really, we want to build brands that consumers love and trust in high passion categories where we feel there's an unmet need or there's a big consumer segment that really hasn't been served terribly well that we think we can serve well.
Mm-hmm. It's so fascinating thinking about just the transition of this company, starting out as this, like you said, SEO kind of content engine, to then realizing maybe that could be like a race to the bottom. How do we actually get into the commerce space? And I think, everyone kept saying every media company is a commerce company and every commerce company is trying to be a media company. Like, how did you make that shift though? Like when it comes to maybe the internal culture and the employees, I mean, it seems so hard transitioning like that, but it looks so easy looking at where the company's at today.
Yeah, I guess, it always looks a little easier looking backwards. But I think you can do an awful lot, with hard work moving forward in the passage of time. I mean, it's a little simplistic. Yeah. You have to have, well, what direction do we want to go in and why do we want to go there? But, it's, my view from the beginning, which is the same today, is realistically speaking, for any business, what you're seeking to do is provide a product or a service to a customer. And typically, within a category. And so people talk a lot in consumer internet lands about, the method of monetization, right? Are you, ad supported, subscription revenue, commerce, as if, being one of those things kind of fundamentally at your core, defines what you are as a business. And I kind of view that a little differently, which is when you think about providing a product or service to a customer base willing to pay for it, what you're always trying to do is align on, well, if we're going to provide this product or service, what's the right exchange of value for it, right? And in some cases, the best way to get that fair exchange of value is with an ad-supported model, right? Kind of tried and true model for content creators forever, almost regardless of medium, has been, hey, if this content has mass appeal, then there are going to be many advertisers who would like to get in front of that audience within that context, and they're going to pay you for it. And you're going to get much more consumption of a mass audience if it is in fact free for them to consume, and the advertisers will pay the freight. If it's specialized content or super premium, i.e. really, really expensive to produce and coveted by people who are willing to pay for it, that lends itself to a subscription model. And then there are cases, of course, where people are clearly looking to purchase and they want brand trust and they want selection and they want price and they want, in some cases it's timely delivery and lowest price. In other cases, they want really highly curated assortment of the best goods available. And so, it all starts with, what are we trying to do, right? A method of monetization should follow that, right? And over time, I think on the internet, you have the ability to diversify the way you make money based on the various ways you're providing value to the people that you serve. I think, Amazon has done an extraordinary job of this, right? It really started as an online retailer within a single category. And if you look at the way Amazon is getting paid today, you've got marketplace, you've got retail, you've got cloud service. And I think they've earned that right because every time they extend value to a customer, right, they are able to say, all right, well, what's the right way for this? People who are high frequency customers who want reduced shipping costs become Prime customers. And then they ratchet up what they're providing to that Prime customer over time. But I would say what they do a really, really good job of is constantly figuring out what is the most aligned way for that exchange of value for the particular product or service they're offering. And I think, that can and should be true of every brand.
Yep. Yeah, completely agree. Do you think right now there's a big opportunity in the market to have more brands come into kind of like a leaf group, like a portfolio of brands where you can learn from each other and maybe not be, forced by investors to grow on, at unreasonable rates or try and return their fund or whatever it may be? Like, do you think it's advantageous to be more in this like portfolio of brands within a holding group?
I think it can be if it's well executed. Yeah. I mean, there are really, really good businesses that are not going to grow, at the rate that, venture investors are interested in. And there are also businesses that are very, very good businesses that aren't going to be big enough for private equity to want to acquire. And yet, if they can, grow kind of in the low to mid double digits for very long periods of time with healthy unit economics and get kind of what I would, kind of the care and feeding they need, right? Do they get access to best practices, the things that they need to do in order to be successful kind of from a back office perspective? Can that be provided to them at a lower cost than they would if they were independent? Do they have access to talent from the broader organization that can make each business a bit stronger than it would be if it was on its own? I mean, I think, IAC, which was the owner of Ticketmaster, where I spent an awful lot of time, has done an extraordinary job of this.
What do you see them doing at Ticketmaster? And are you taking any of their initial concepts and kind of have brought it over to the Leaf Group?
I think it's interesting. There's kind of nothing new under the sun, right? In business, really, or in life. But when you observe people doing something particularly well, I think it validates the concept. So then the question is okay, well, if we would like to have similar success, what do we need to do in order to make that happen? And so, I think it's, what you learn about managing, multiple brands. By the way, as you know, there are multiple brands that are sitting in corporations that focus exclusively, on quick service food, right? Restaurants. There are brands that, or there are businesses that only own luxury fashion, right? And they're some of the biggest, most valuable companies on the planet. So again, this is not a new concept. What are the ingredients for success? I would say a handful of things. One, having a very good understanding of your circle of competence. What are the categories we know well and we think we're equipped to succeed in? Becoming a good allocator of capital against opportunities, right? The idea, you may say, hey, this category is ripe for opportunity, but we don't know a whole heck of a lot about it, and we think it's really capital intense, so that may not be for us. Being able to bring in very, very talented people in one business, but having an environment that is dynamic so that, people can stay with us for 3, 5, 7, 10 years, if they have the desire and the aptitude, and being able to offer them opportunities that they might not get within a single business, of similar size. I think you got to commit yourself to doing the things well that make that, that brand and business diversity in a portfolio, greater than, some of the, not necessarily the friction, but the complexity can create.
Yeah. So in this environment today, what are you learning between brands that you're able to kind of share, across all the brands and lift them up together? Are there any commonalities right now that are maybe newer to this environment we're in?
That's a great question. I think that the areas where I'd say we gain the most benefit, I think the advantage we get is kind of the speed, the feedback loop. Because we get to see things from multiple different places, I think that actually helps us. But what are we very, very knowledgeable about based on where we sit? So it's interesting. People have been talking about the death of email forever, but email is an incredibly important channel still for commerce and for content, right? A newsletter with high open rates and high engagement is really, really valuable. Understanding those best practices so that you can provide a great experience across your portfolio of businesses matters an awful lot. SEO still matters an awful lot. Experimentation within new channels matters, right? And so if one, across businesses, if you have good, smart people, every business is going to move at a bit of a different pace in terms of their experimentation or their execution in various distribution channels. The beauty is if someone is having early success on Instagram, they can share that internally very quickly. And so the best practice sharing in a world that's changing really quickly can become good, solid competitive advantage. Also, the benchmarking that comes from that. Okay, this team is excellent at commerce SEO. Well, that means we should be excellent across the organization as quickly as we can. We should have really good closing speed at replicating areas of excellence inside the company.
Yeah. How do you make sure that the brands don't all start doing exactly the same thing? Like, how do you keep them experimenting in what they're best at? And then, maybe saying this is our new benchmark and this is what everyone should be doing without all of a sudden looking and being like, oh, all my brands now are doing exactly the same thing. And there is no experimentation because they just are circling the same knowledge.
It's a great question. I think if you're, hiring capable people who want to function with a high degree of autonomy, I think the problem kind of solves itself because, they would like their day-to-day independence in executing their business. And we certainly encourage that. But really, really strong leaders also want to learn and steal from their colleagues, right? Kind of in the most positive of ways to say, hey, if it's working great for you, I want to find out about that. So then the question is, what type of, lightweight framework that you can set up that isn't some sort of forced synergy, which I think is kind of the death knell of moving quickly and smartly. But it creates a natural exchange of information rather than relying on, well, gosh, I hope everybody takes the initiative to find out what their colleague in a sister business is working on that could be helpful to them. And, we do that internally through regular product meetings, right? So we on a pretty regular basis will get people together for, probably half a day, and they're going to walk through from a standpoint of, again, we look at it really through the lens of the customer experience. What are we building by way of product and service, and how is it working? And that could be anything from a social media integration to a new approach to SEO to talking about podcast marketing and what it's actually done to engagement on platform. And so when you're focusing on the things that matter most to the business operators, where they're having real success or real challenge, it creates, that coming together for best practice sharing that works pretty well for us. And then over time, people start to develop real relationships with one another. And what you hope is the meeting itself, which again is, it's probably every other month and it's half a day, is really the catalyst for ongoing interactions about, hey, what's working really well for you now? Or I've got this really sticky problem around conversion. What have you guys tried that works, or what are you hearing out there?
So tell me about some of the personalities on your team. I mean, I'm just imagining you've got these companies you're acquiring, so you're the founders and you're, probably bringing in subject matter experts. Like what does the team look like?
Yeah, really, really good question. So when you're thinking about building teams, I think for diverse businesses, I think you have to have be pretty comfortable with, a wide range of personalities,
Mm-hmm.
and experiences. Um, by the way, I think that's healthy for single brand, single line businesses too, but
Yep.
particularly so in our world. But at the same time, you're looking for common traits, just based on, the type of company we are and the culture we have. And I would say, a few things jump to mind, which is, we really do. We're still a pretty small business. There's, I think, about 400 of us across, our brands. And
400 sounds pretty mighty to me, but
yeah,
carry on.
and it's so, we all we all do work. So the player
Hmm.
coach model works. Like the idea of someone who does wonderful presentations and great PowerPoints, and that's kind of it. That doesn't it really work terribly well inside a Leaf Group.
Yep.
We want strategic doers, in much of what we do. We want people who are highly confident, but also very, very kind of comfortable and low ego. I want
Hmm.
enough ego where people are very, very confident in their abilities, but not so much that they suck the energy out of the room. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, Again, we do a lot with, we're pretty scrappy and we run lean. Not a great place for, I would say, politicians or bureaucrats. And one of the things that we always try to look for in our leaders is this kind of desire or willingness to help, right? Which is not just within the team, but having some capacity for selflessness and being other directed. Because
Hmm.
it's hard to get best practice sharing, do a lot with a little in a world where people are primarily focused only on what's directly in front of them, right? I'm a huge believer in the team approach. And for teams to really thrive, people have to have, that gene which says, I am willing to give something more of myself than perhaps left to my own devices. I would, because I want to help
Hmm.
my team out. Like I'll
Yep.
go the extra mile for my team. I will pick up the slack of someone else because that's who I am. I think you can stress the importance of it, but the capacity to be willing to help someone else out on the team to fight through tough times, I think that's very much of a personality type.
Yeah. How are you testing for that in the interview process? I mean, all of those, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I want to hire candidates just like that. But how are you going about filtering for those kinds of people?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it comes to the conversation you're having with people, in that process, about their personal journey and about their story. What have been the most formative moments of their life?
Hmm.
Who are the people that they're closest to and why?
Hmm.
What was the most challenging situation that they've been in? And from that, again, it's interesting. The people who, when people talk about who's had the most impact in their life and why, uh, you tend to get a sense, for what moves and motivates them as a human being, right?
Hmm.
Um, what are the traits they most admire, in others? Um,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
like that. So it's literally learning about the person. Who knew?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
real, and, because it's interesting when I was at Ticketmaster, we, at one point I had, the responsibility, over, our, call centers, and we had really, really strong leaders, Scott Powell and Sandy Garr, who ran the businesses directly. And one of the things that was always very interesting to me is, if you kind of went beyond the tools and the background and the experience set, and you looked at who are the people most successful in the role, there are people who genuinely enjoyed helping other people, right?
Hmm.
So if they have the basic skills and the drive and you're giving them good tools to work with, the differentiator was attitude, right? Which is
Hmm.
if you're someone who is really, really excited to help someone else out, you're gonna be a phenomenal asset as a customer service person.
Yeah.
If that doesn't excite you and you're just functionally competent at it, that level of differentiation that separates good from great is never going to be there. And I think that does tend to come out in, in people's stories. I mean, it's fairly easy to screen for, talent, for kind of smarts and motivation and everything else. But when it comes down to those intangibles that result in a great team, I think probably, deep interviewing on personal story to get what motivates people, to see if what motivates people in their own lives is consistent with what you think drives success in your organization.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to hear your thoughts on the future right now. Like, where do you think things are headed, or do you have any contrarian opinions that others disagree with you on, or maybe your team members don't even agree with you on? Like, where do you think this ship is headed?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting time to ask that question, right? Because, we, have had this incredible bull market run that's lasted, basically, slightly more than a decade. And so the big question is, are we headed into a recession? What's the likelihood of that? How deep is it going to be?
I think we're in it technically, right?
And I think we are. But I also think
if you go by the definitions, like 2 down quarters or something.
Yeah, and people can argue around the edges of the definition, but there's also a lot of conflicting things out there, right? Which is, I think it's still a substantially, broadly speaking, competitive job market. People still have an awful lot of money saved. Inflation is real and can take you backwards very, very quickly. How much of this is transitory as a consequence of hot money and the supply chain, and how much is it, will this be a long hangover? People can have their theories, but I don't think people really know. And so I think the shock of the pandemic, in every meaning of the word shock, is very, very real, and the recovery is going to take time, and I think it's going to be very, very unpredictable. That said, the world is awash in capital. I think there's extraordinary innovation that is going to continue to come. Like, technology doesn't stop moving merely because we go into a recession. And innovation, in many ways, in recessionary environments, or when some of the best companies are created, I think the world in some cases slows down. The allocation of capital gets more disciplined, and there's less frivolous stuff going on. And so I think we will kind of soldier through the next couple of years. My own personal view is, it's probably more likely than not that we're in a mild recession over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And businesses that have been heavily capitalized and, consuming a lot of capital are not going to be able to do that, in our sector the way that they were. But the opportunities, again, for innovation, new company formation, building new businesses that materially make people's lives better, like that hasn't changed one bit, right? What ends up happening is the foundation that we build upon keeps getting stronger and more robust, and great entrepreneurs come along and they take advantage of things that didn't exist even a few years earlier, right? And so that cycle will continue. The other thing that will tend to happen is the kind of the best companies will be able to make huge inroads in terms of competitive advantage, because they will be able to consolidate more of the talent that's out there. The talent can get really diffuse in these really, really hot markets where there's tons of new opportunity on every corner, and can make real progress.
Is there anything at the Leaf Group that you guys are doing specifically? Are you focused on margins? Are you maybe pausing on acquiring new companies or launching new ones on your own? Like, how are you kind of prepping for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think, every company, there's certainly I think Herb Teller at Southwest Airlines used to talk about, you should always manage your company mostly the same in good times and in bad. And I think that that precept, holds true. But I think you need to be more disciplined and more focused in times like this. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad times, but certainly tougher times and more ambiguity. We pulled forward a couple of years of, consumer demand probably in the first year of the pandemic. What does that demand curve look like over the course of the next couple of years? I think probably more than anything, people lack visibility. And so I think, you need to be very disciplined and focused in the short term, but still have conviction around what your long-term plans are. Why does your business and brand exist? And what do you want to do with it over time? But certainly be measured and disciplined, as we navigate through, whatever this next period brings to us. But again, when I look at our businesses, we've always had a bit of that. We're building this for the long haul, right? I want, our brands to be loved and trusted household names 10 years down the road. And so, given the realities of today's environment, how do we make sure we're being prudent and disciplined, in particular at this time of uncertainty, but still marching towards that ultimate goal of where we want these businesses to be? And I think, you think long-term, but you're calibrating intelligently on the short-term realities.
Yep. Yeah, you can definitely tell you've had that long-term thinking throughout your career, and just kind of hearing how you were even prepping your first companies and going into Leaf Group and, margins and when it would become a good business. I mean, are you able to also think about new technologies when they're like, are you able to kind of explore other areas, maybe NFTs for art, or thinking about blockchain, or are these things that you're like, let's just wait and see until we get past this?
Yeah. We did our first NFT drop, the other avatars, at the very beginning of this year. And we're really, really proud of it.
So you're in it.
Cool. It was a sellout. We're in it. Again, I continue to be fascinated by new technology. And at the same time, you want to say, okay, well, there's a part of me that would love for us to just play around with the new stuff all the time and see where it gets us. But I think, for right or wrong, kind of where I've evolved on this is, you want some willful experimentation, but it should always be driven not, just by, let's play around and see if we can find something new here. But, go back to what might this technology enable us to do for our customers that we couldn't do before, right? So we look at, the NFT space, and I am a believer. I mean, digital art's been around for a long time. The idea that the blockchain would, could provide provenance and liquidity and the ability to probably, to trade, to earn artists enduring revenue streams, all of a sudden you say, gosh, we can do a lot more for the artist and for the collector than we could before. Whether this will hit or not, it's unknown. I'm a believer that that collectible digital art is real, and over the next 10 years we will see that made manifest. But I could be wrong. But it's very clear that if we're a platform which is about connecting artists and collectors and art lovers to what they care about most, and NFT art is out there, that we should be able to put our best foot forward so that our platform truly serves people in this new area. But we should seek to do it consistent with what our own ethos is. And for us, curation matters an awful lot. Putting together collections where we've got wonderful artists, they're working against a particular theme, where a collector can come and get educated, that can understand this artist's work, the physical work that they've done, and go on a journey with us, rather than just tossing something out there, to feed the temporal excitement of a bunch of speculators. That's just not our thing.
Yeah. Well, that's what's interesting about the time period right now, is all the buildup around speculation is probably going to go away, and out comes utility and function, and seeing what actually is here for the long term.
Where I say I'm probably a little bit contrarian is in some ways, I guess I can be a lot contrary, but this idea, nothing new under the sun. Now, people would hear that sometimes at first blush, they say, wait a second. The world is changing all the time. And in sometimes changing in wonderful ways, and in some cases terrible ways. But there truly, if you kind of step back a bit, there is nothing new under the sun. Technology always marches forward, and it is able to deliver things that allow people over time to live richer, fuller lives. Sometimes technology innovation takes human existence backwards, right? Whether it's modern weaponry on a battlefield in World War I. But that will always be part of the human condition because it's who we are. And so, what I always try to square is what is fundamental and essential to human nature that today's technology or tomorrow's technology will allow us to deliver on because we weren't able to meet something that is not a fundamental human need that technology now makes possible being met, or for the first time, or maybe in a better way, right? Trying to balance those things, which is technology is almost a form of magic to the extent that it can fundamentally improve and extend what it means to be human.
Yeah. Oh, and that is a great place to end this interview. Sean, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing what you're up to now and your journey of how you got here. Where can our listeners learn more about Leaf Group and yourself?
Sure. So you could certainly go to leafgroup.com and see a whole heck of a lot about our brands. You can also, if you're excited by what you heard about art, go to Saatchi Art and Citysearch. Again, hundreds of thousands of artists across the globe working on both of those platforms. If you're into fitness and wellness, definitely check out Well and Good and Livestrong. Livestrong probably does more to provide really kind of high quality, fact-based utility content about fitness and nutrition than any other site out there. And then we have a wonderful site that I haven't mentioned called Only in Your State, which people should check out because
I looked that up actually. That looked fascinating.
There are wonderful things to do in your own backyard that you probably haven't thought about or heard about, but Only in Your State covers. And we've got a whole lot more brands inside the portfolio besides that. So definitely come check us out. Stephanie, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
I want to quickly thank our sponsor, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, for help making this podcast possible. If you're looking for the #1 platform for all things commerce, there's no better choice. So definitely go check it out at salesforce.com/commerce.